I thought it would be really interesting to throw a challenge at writers, myself included, and to have constraints, which isn't. There are other formats that do similar things where you have to include a certain prop or certain word or something like that, but I thought it would be quite interesting to see what happens if you're basically given a starting point and an ending point, and you have to figure out how to connect the two, how to basically, get from point A to point B and make it coherent and logical, and hopefully actually be inspired by that point A and point B, and just add a little twist into it. I thought it'd be even more interesting to bring the public into it and say, why don't you give us some lines? Why don't you see what creativity you can provide us, and then put us in a position of having to take your idea and let us fill in the blanks, so to speak. I thought it was also a really fun idea to work with other companies, because there are so many wonderful writers in Toronto that it seemed like a great excuse to bring some of them in and work on them with this, to provide a diversity of viewpoints and styles, which is exactly what seems to be happening. We've got an eclectic four pieces, which interestingly do have a lot of overlap, but are stylistically different enough that it'll make for an interesting evening of theater, I think. They weren't all necessarily like the funniest or the most provocative or the most colorful lines. There were some that were just hysterical, but we couldn't use them because of the structure of the show, which necessitates one line not only being an opening line of the piece, but also being the closing line of the piece. And so there were some that were clearly opening lines, but there's no way that they would be able to be used in any way to kind of resolve a narrative or a scene, or however you want to put it. Having said that, there were some lines that were so broad or so simple that they almost felt like cheating, that they would provide no challenge, that they could just be interpreted in almost any way. And the ones that we did ultimately settle on kind of hinted at a direction without being too obvious, but were enough of a challenge that that they would guide the piece without necessarily immediately setting up like, these are your characters, this is the premise, and allowing the writers a certain amount of freedom while still having to navigate that A to B process. Yeah.